One of the most important things to remember when you're writing a feature is to write for a single reader. Don't try and address a crowd. Aim for a single person. Write it as though you're having a conversation with someone. If you use phrases like "some of you may think that," then what you're doing is you're telling the reader that they're not really your main focus, that you're talking to lots of people. If instead you change that phrase to "you may think that," now you're dealing with one person, you're speaking directly to one reader, and that's the kind of interaction they want to have with a feature. Another thing to try and avoid is patronising the reader. If you say something like "I was lucky enough to," it implies, reader, you weren't. You didn't have the privileged access I've got. Look at me, aren't I great? That's not the kind of feeling you want to give the reader. You want to give the reader the feeling that they're with you and are also, they have this privileged access. So if you say things like "I was lucky enough to," or "you may not have thought about," again, "you may not have thought about" suggests you're not as clever as I am because I've thought about it and you haven't. You even have to be careful of a phrase like "everyone knows," because not everyone will know whatever it is you're about to say, and you alienate the people who don't know. Another element of writing with style is to add some variety into your writing. So vary the length and construction of sentences. If you have a series of sentences with the same length and similar sort of construction, then the writing sounds predictable and it sounds boring. If all the sentences are very short, then the writing sounds like it's aimed at children. So try to vary the length and the construction of your sentences. Make some of them very simple, some of them a little bit more complex. And if you do that, that will avoid a monotonous feeling to your writing. If you have a series of long sentences and then you include a very short sentence, it tends to provide impact to that short sentence. So that's something you can use to show the reader what's important in what they're reading. Here's an example of rewriting a piece of text to vary the length of the sentences and so improve the way it reads. And you can see as I go through each sentence, they're very much the same sort of length, and they're all the same sort of construction as well. So there aren't any what are called subordinate clauses, there aren't any extra phrases with commas to separate them. They're all very simple, straightforward sentences. So what we can do is just edit a little bit so that we connect these sentences together . The next part, again, we can tie those two sentences together. And now what we've got is, we've got that long sentence with a phrase in the middle here, "bound for the airport at Villacoublay." That is a subordinate clause, which is marked by the pair of commas. Then we've got another slightly simpler and shorter sentence, which again has got a split in the middle with a comma. And then right at the end, we've got a very short sentence. It sounds much more interesting because there's that variety. Here's another way to write with style. Avoid using what are called crutch phrases. These are phrases that people rely on in order to help them write, and they don't actually mean anything. They don't add anything to the feature. There's a list of them here on the screen. So things like "at this moment in time," "as a matter of fact." They're phrases that we all sort of use, but they don't really mean anything. Another thing you can do is to weed out intensifiers. What do I mean by intensifiers? If you look at this sentence, "the job left him very tired." Well, here, "very" is the intensifier. He's not just tired, he's very tired. Instead of picking the right word instead of tired, we're picking a sort of general purpose word, and then we're emphasising it by using very. If instead we use a better word than tired, we get a more stylish sentence. So we can say, "the job left him exhausted." That's a better use of the language. Something else you can do is to use your research so that you can make clear declarative comments rather than comparative comments. So rather than saying "it is one of the best in the world," it's much stronger if you can say "it is the best in the world." If you don't know enough about it to make that statement, you need to go and do some more research. use concrete language whenever you can. Here's an example about Sebastian Vettel, Formula 1 driver, earns a lot of money, and he's been fined for some indiscretion or other. Sebastian Vettel earns $16 million a year, so a €35,000 fine means nothing to him. Well, what you're asking your reader to do here is quite a complex piece of analysis. You're asking them to think about, what does $16 million mean? What does €35,000 mean to them? What's the relationship between those two numbers? How much of $16 million is €35,000, and how much would that mean to you if you earned that amount of money a year? It's all very complicated. If instead you say this, fining Sebastian Vettel €35,000 has the same impact as fining the average Briton £35. Now most people can relate to that. They can think, well, okay, I'm an average Briton, or I understand what that means. It has the same impact as fining me £35. I understand. In summary, write for a single reader. Don't lecture a crowd. Be the reader's friend. Don't patronise them. Don't show off your own skill or your own access. Vary the length and construction of your sentences. Try and avoid using crutch phrases. Use precise descriptive words and fewer intensifiers. Do some really strong research and then use that to form bold, declarative statements rather than vague sort of comparisons. And finally, use real, concrete examples rather than abstractions.